Welcome everyone to today's presentation. My name is Vince Daniele, and click on this slide. Lisa, you can see my slides, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. So welcome everyone. My name is Vince. Been with Imagine It for close to 10 years. I have over 15 years professional experience in AEC. One of my passions in AEC is visualization and working with programs like 3ds Max and some VR solutions in the past. So I'm really excited to do this presentation today that highlights Twinmotion, which is a new partnership that Imagine It just started. But I am based out of our Detroit, Michigan office, and as Lisa mentioned, I am a team manager for our Building Solutions division here. Picture of my wife and our new baby. We just had a baby in March, and I can't forget my dog Duke here. So, all right. So just getting into it here, what is Twinmotion? So for those of you that have never heard of Twinmotion before, Twinmotion is a visualization platform for AEC professionals. We can produce high quality images, 360-degree panoramas, standard videos, 360-degree videos, and one really great feature about Twinmotion that really separates it from some other programs out there is that we do have one click to VR. So quick button, you can leverage all your data, get to VR very, very quickly, and the results are pretty impressive. So just some other stuff there. And within Twinmotion, we're leveraging data that we create in other authoring programs like Revit, AutoCAD, 3ds Max, Navisworks. But we can also add things to our environment within Twinmotion, so we can kind of add context and prop the scenes up using some Twinmotion tools. So the goal of this presentation is to pretty much highlight the ease of use of Twinmotion and show you where it's really strong and what it can do in a really quick time. So before I do any live demo, I want to just show you a video that one of our technical experts, Dean, created just a few days ago. So he leveraged, just to kind of set this up, Dean did leverage a Revit model. So he used a Revit model, exported his Revit model into Twinmotion, and was able to build the entire scene in Twinmotion within a few hours. So what you're about to see was done in a really quick turnaround time, and it's pretty impressive. So we'll go ahead and play this video for you. We're not going to get any audio over the GoToMeeting for this video, but I'll just kind of talk through it. So this is a data set that we got from Autodesk and brought it into Twinmotion. So all of the things that you see in here, the people, the assets like the flag flying in the wind, the seagulls flying around, those were all added in Twinmotion very, very quickly. All of the foliage, vegetation also added in Twinmotion. I'll show you some tricks based on the RPC objects that we might add in Revit and how those translate over to Twinmotion. But you can see the traffic moving, the lighting. We can change the weather data, hot air balloons in the background, and we can really start to highlight things like change of the day, daytime, daylighting. We see the moonlight, you see the illumination from those artificial lights. And where it really gets impressive is when we start to get inside of the scene. So we're about to teleport here inside the building. And this is just kind of funny to highlight what Twinmotion can do with particle systems. We have that computer smoking there, but just more people. We can embed videos within the video. So a lot of really great things that usually are typically pretty hard to do within a program like 3ds Max or take a lot of time. We can do them really quickly and get a great result, and you don't need to be a visualization expert or a visualization pro. You can get into this program and you can start to have fun playing around with stuff, adding people, adding materials, adding assets. This is just showing how the aging of the trees work. So I'm going to highlight all of this stuff in the live demo, But what we really wanted to do in this webcast is show you what this program is capable of in kind of a more polished, finished product. Because obviously with the constraints of a demo, I can only show you a few things and give you kind of a sampling of what it can do. But we wanted to show that we can create these polished presentations right from Twinmotion. And that video ran 2 minutes, and based on Dean's machine, he's got a workstation computer. It only took it about a couple of hours to output that video at 30 frames per second. So getting a little technical there, but very, very quick render times. So I'm going to start here within the Revit model. Now, in Twinmotion, we do not have to use Revit models. Twinmotion accepts many different file formats. There are preferred file formats, and I'll talk about where you can find information about which file formats are accepted. But the main file that we use with Autodesk programs is the FBX file. So with Twinmotion, when we have a Revit 3D model here in a 3D view, Revit is the only Autodesk program that actually has a Twinmotion plugin. So you'll find this, there's a link, and I'll show in the start screen for Twinmotion how to get this direct link. But with Revit, we have a Twinmotion plugin and a few different settings directly there in the ribbon. So the first button, C in Twinmotion, that creates, it's called a direct link between your Revit model and your Twinmotion scene. So just like an XREF or a link in another program, it is referencing the Revit model. So any changes that we make to our Revit model, we can push into Twinmotion and update in the Twinmotion environment. It is not a bi-directional exchange. So if changes occur in Twinmotion, they can't get pushed back to Revit. But the linking is live, and you can push material changes and object changes from Revit into Twinmotion if you're working on them simultaneously. But other than that, we've got some settings to control some of those sync features. I'm not going to go through all of these just for the sake of time. And then we also have an export. So for those of you that are familiar with Revit and exporting out an FBX file from Revit, yes, we do natively have that in a Revit file. We can export directly to FBX, but we don't have any settings to control sort of how that FBX is authored or created from Revit. So this export setting, all it's doing is creating an FBX file, but that FBX file, we do have the ability to change some of those settings when we author that out to Twinmotion. So things like how we want to combine materials or combine objects, we can merge them by family, by material, or not merge them when we create the FBX. I actually prefer this setting here. So all of my objects are separated. It just gives you a little bit more control. And then you also have options for exporting the vegetation. So anything that falls under a plant category, exclude MEP objects or MEP families, and include any linked files. Now, again, for the sake of this demo, if I had both the MEP and the structure models linked into this Revit model, it'd be a pretty heavy data set. So just for time and making sure my computer, which isn't the greatest computer, doesn't crash, we don't have the links in here, but you definitely could. And we've done tests in the links. If you have your ductwork, your pipe, your structure, all of that gets packaged into one nice FBX file and can be sent over or opened up, imported into Twinmotion. So I'm not going to export. I've already kind of pre-done all of this stuff, so we don't have to wait for any progress bars or anything like that. But just to kind of show what this model looks like in Revit. And we could go to a realistic view in Revit, but we all know how it might look okay, but it doesn't look great. And sure, we can render out of Revit, but we're limited in sort of the way the lighting is and the way the materials are configured. And just it's a challenge in programs like Revit or AutoCAD to start to generate materials and assign them. So that's one of the huge benefits of Twinmotion. And let me just close out here. So I am going to close Revit just to free up space on my computer as I go through this and get right into the Twinmotion program. So And as this is launching, I know I'm using Revit as an example, but that FBX file, it's supported through 3ds Max. We can get FBX from Navisworks, from AutoCAD. We used to be able to push FBX files right from AutoCAD. Now we can't. I'm not sure why that was removed from AutoCAD, but you can still export to a DXF and bring that directly into Twinmotion, or you can take your AutoCAD DWG, bring it into Navisworks or 3ds Max, and then author it out as an FBX from one of those programs, and it's going to create separate elements the way that we would want it, or the way that we would prefer that Twinmotion reads them. So there's maybe some workarounds from DWG into Twinmotion, but other programs that have a direct output to FBX, InfraWorks will do that. So you can take a Civil 3D file, bring it into InfraWorks, export out of InfraWorks as an FBX. So there's a lot of different ways to get your data in. It does not require that direct link plugin that I just showed you. But having said that, when Twinmotion launches up here, we do have this button here to get right to the direct link plugins. So if you are using Revit, SketchUp, ArchiCAD, Rhino, all of those programs have direct link plugins. And you just click this button, it'll bring you to the Twinmotion site to download those plugins. Also on this welcome screen, just to point out, the program's super intuitive and easy to learn, but they do have a quick link to get to YouTube videos that have tutorials on how to use Twinmotion. And this is primarily the way that myself and my team have learned Twinmotion, just kind of sitting through these YouTube videos and testing things. Now, we do have a pretty good technical background, so picking up some of the visualization tricks, you can relate some of your other experience there. But again, it's a super intuitive program, and you'll see how quickly your scenes can come to life, and you can make them look really, really nice. I do like to set my navigation mode to Revit controls, but there are some different ones you can choose from here. Okay, so just closing this out. When you first launch up Twinmotion, the sort of the default template or the blank scene that you get is this really blank or empty landscape with a city behind it. So I'm just going to scroll around this before I import any files in to show you what this looks like. But we've basically got a sky environment, the city background, which is 360 degrees. If I just kind of orbit around, and if I zoom into the ground here, you can see that there is some type of just base material. I don't know who decided that it would be a herringbone brick pattern, but you're going to replace that no matter what. I guess you don't have to, but chances are if you're bringing in files that you're building a site and everything like I showed in the video, you're probably going to delete that out right away. So you can delete the floor, we can change the background image and set this up. But what I want to show is just how quick and easy, first off, it is to import the model in the FBX. So I pre-generated an FBX file of that community center that I showed you in Revit. Now, the reason I'm not doing the direct link is when you do have a direct link, things kind of become locked down, because in order to maintain that direct link between Revit and Twinmotion, the positional data has to remain in the same spot. So we don't want to be moving things around in Twinmotion and then push the update from Revit back to Twinmotion and see stuff move back to where it was from the Revit model. So it's basically when you do a direct link, things are very static. If anyone has any experience between linking a Revit file in 3ds Max, same thing. We can't physically manipulate the objects that are part of the link because they have to be in the same sort of spot. So when we do push it out, they remain in the same place. So I'm going to grab the import. And I do have, this one's a little bit more complete. I'll get back to that one in a second. I'm going to use one that's a little bit more bare bones here to begin with. So this one here should be pretty raw. And when you go to import in, you do have some different options. of how you want the hierarchy of your materials to be joined or your objects. So basically, we can combine everything by material. We can combine everything as one object. So not paying attention to material, just joining everything as one object, or we can keep everything separated out. I prefer this. It just gives you more control. If you do take the time in Revit or whatever other program you're using to assign different materials to every element, then you can use that combined by material, and it's kind of quicker to assign new materials in Twinmotion to all of those things at once. I just find this way to be a bit easier and more control. So, all right, click OK. And should only take a few moments here. And always keep in mind that no matter what, just like with any other program, the information that you put into your model is going to reflect how it comes over in Twinmotion. So the more time that we spend in detailing out the Revit model, the nicer it's going to look with materials and detail that you put into maybe your lighting and all of those things can save you time in Twinmotion. Sure, we could probably adjust a lot of those things in the Twinmotion model, but use the program that you're the most comfortable with in actually creating the model, and use Twinmotion maybe to fill in the context. So here's the community center. Nothing too crazy here. We do have this really bad looking topography and site. You see these RPC trees come in looking like those cardboard cutouts. So generally this just doesn't look that great yet, but we can start to build context within this model and really spend some time to make it presentation quality. And it's pretty quick and easy to do this. So I'll just start kind of showing the outside. We are able to orbit around the building, but the fun is when you start to get inside. So I will go ahead and sort of try to navigate to this area that I planned on showing. Oh, nice. I got right in there. So go back. There we go. So once we're in the model, you can see that generally the Revit materials, some of them translate all right, like maybe the wood floor and the walls, but other ones, especially the glass, they just don't come through into Twinmotion. Probably because of the way the material was generated in Revit, and sometimes those Autodesk materials just don't speak well to the Unreal Engine, which is what Twinmotion is built on, in the way that it deals with OSL materials. So some of them translate good with textures, some of them don't, and it's probably because glass has a transparency map on it. So anyway, just to show you how to build out this scene really quickly, I'm going to show a few things here for the interior. Then I'll show you some stuff outside to do vegetation, and then I'll kind of open up a better file that has more of this decked out and adjusted. So more materials and cooler tricks that we did in prepping this demo. So first off, we can use the eyedropper here to pick a material. This pane on the left side, this is called our library asset palette. So we can get to different materials, all of the different objects that we would place in a Twinmotion project. The first button here are the materials. So materials being a big thing that we're going to use. But just doing the eyedropper here, you'll see that at the bottom screen, so this is really where you kind of edit everything. It's like your authoring or your editing palette at the bottom. So it's telling me what that Revit material was, glass cast gray, which is kind of an odd name for glass, but we can pick the element. We can change settings directly for that element, so you don't have to replace the Revit material. You can update it. You can update its settings without replacing it. But for glass, it's probably, we already do have a material in Twinmotion for glass. So if I go into materials and just choose two-sided glass, I can quickly swap out my glass. And now we can see through the window. So really nice, quick. Same maybe for the area here with this weird looking slate stone wall. I can pick that. It does come from Revit. It's in just a flat material. So the texture map does translate, it's there. But if we look really closely at this, it just does not look very good. It just looks flat and the lighting on it's terrible and there's some shadows baked in. It just looks ugly. So again, if we wanted to, we could change things like the reflection of it, the scale, so the scale of the texture. We could go through and change some of the other settings like the bump map or assign a bump map to it. But instead of using this really bad looking material, I'm just going to replace it with a nice, I like this one, slate stone. Now notice that when you drag a material, it's going to replace all of that old material with this new Twinmotion one, which is great, right? It's a quick way of swapping a material out, but maybe we don't always want to swap all of the materials out. One of the things I've found from Revit that causes issues is in Revit files, we have all of these generic materials that are assigned to all different types of Revit categories. Well, if you swap out the generic material with like this brick, for example, then everything with that generic material is going to get brick. So it's kind of challenging. We use generic materials for a lot of different things in Revit, but we might not necessarily want them to just be a generic material. There are two options in Twinmotion. We can replace the entire material or we can apply it to a single object. So just by doing this, we can swap out, one wall at a time and really make it however we want. So maybe this wall's all brick. This one's going to be gyp or something. I can pick the gyp wall back here and then apply that to this wall. So there are all different types of ways you can quickly assign your materials and update the scene. We can grab the floor material. So again, just a wood floor. Now you are able to bring your own texture maps in. So if I just wanted to replace this wood out with a different wood, we can open up a different texture map, maybe choose a lighter pattern and bring that in, or there are plenty of different materials available, especially for wood materials in Twinmotion. So this in, scale it up. Oh, and one feature I really like about Twinmotion and just making things look more realistic. Sometimes when we create our renderings, everything looks too polished. Like the walls are super clean, the floors are shiny, there are no imperfections. One of the default material settings for Twinmotion materials is a setting to, let's see, where is that? No, sorry. Still getting used to all of the settings here, but is it under, there it is. Under the color area, we can apply grunge to the surface. So on this wall here that we're looking at to the right, you see as I slide through this, we can start to make it pretty dirty or make it pretty clean. So just some quick stuff, maybe we wouldn't want it to be very dirty, like 30% or all the way up, make it real moldy up to 100, but something around 5% might make it look like it just needs to be wiped clean and makes it look more realistic. So some cool, quick stuff that we can do with materials. Now, another thing that Twinmotion allows us to do very quickly for interior scenes, there is a pretty good asset library built into this program. So under objects, in the home library, we've got some different folders for things like living room, kitchen, bedrooms, bathrooms, office. So I'll just show you here that with living room, we can start to place things like tables, I can back up, place some different chairs, electrical appliances. There are all these little assets like plants and magazines and books that we can start to add. So all of this little detail really starts to bring the scene to life, and it makes it look like less of a hollow shell and something that can actually be lived in or experienced. And a lot of these assets, what's great about them is they are low polygon count, but they perform very well when you go to render, and they look extremely realistic. So things like decorations, we start to put stuff up on the walls. And one of my favorite things to do is add people for context. So just some of the things here, we can grab different characters. So you see that in the characters, we have animated humans, posed humans, cutouts, groups, animals. So we can go in here and really quickly drag and drop someone into the scene, animated context. And what's interesting about Twinmotion is that since it is built on the Unreal gaming engine, a lot of the tricks that we see that Twinmotion pulls off are things that are used in video games. Like, for example, Fortnite has a lot of the same type of animations and characters, and I'll save that for the end, but I've got something kind of fun to show you. But we can start to add people in context. They don't have to be animated, but the animated people are cool. And we can change things like the color on their clothes, make them look different. You can even change their pose if they're idle or if they're talking. So let's see, I've got Ergram. Let's change her pose to speaking, and even different options of how we want her to speak with her hands. And just really quick. Let's put a cow in here, why not? There we go. So really friendly space here. We allow animals, okay? So I'm not going to go through all of these things, but you saw in the video that we do have a lot of different vehicles. So just to kind of show you an idea, there's a whole bunch of different vehicles of different shapes and sizes in here, different models. There are even aircrafts, hot air balloons, motorcycles, bikes, yachts. So there's all different types of preloaded assets. These all come with Twinmotion, so you don't have to buy these as separate packages. All right. So next up, I'm just going to zoom back out. Actually, before I zoom out, let me just point out one thing. See, I'm about a half hour in here. So one thing I definitely need to point out, lighting. So the lights that you create in your other programs will not automatically get replaced or placed within the Twinmotion scene. So we do unfortunately have to place our lights. It's just because of the way that the gaming engine works. It's a whole different type of light that's used than a light that would be used in, let's say, a Revit or AutoCAD or whatever program you're using. I'm not sure, 3ds Max, there are certain lights that are accepted with the gaming engine, so we probably can push them out of 3ds Max and have them show up. But we haven't tested that, and I know for a fact that whatever the light parameters are, even if they do come in, we wouldn't be able to adjust them once they're in Twinmotion, so they're kind of static. But with the Twinmotion lights, we have a whole bunch of different light spreads to choose from spotlights to area lights, and bringing these in is just a matter of dragging and dropping them. And then just some of the light settings that we can control in the interior. We can change the intensity of the light. We can control the light color, the angle of the spread of the light, how we want that light to spread, and the attenuation, which controls the distance that light can go. So it might be hard to see here, just go up, because of all the daylight that's coming in. But if I really increase the intensity and maybe decrease the angle of this light, we'll start to see that, in real time, it does create a light that we can see, and we can turn shadows. So right now with shadows off, we don't see the shadows of the chair, but we can turn shadows on to get that realistic look. My floor is a little reflective here, so I'm just gonna make that dial down. But you can see all of this stuff. We get a really quick feedback from the settings that we change and how that final render is going to be. And one thing I will point out here, I mentioned earlier, my computer is not the greatest computer. It doesn't have the greatest graphics card. It's about 4 years old, so it's a little bit outdated, but it can still move through this program and navigate really well. automatically Twinmotion will detect what computer hardware you have, and it will set this quality for your machine. So mine defaults to a medium quality, but if you have a better graphics card and more memory, it might go to high, or if you have a really good workstation, probably desktop with a really good graphics card, it might default to ultra. I've got a slide after this that I'll show you the specs and the recommended requirements for your hardware. But even on my old computer, I'm getting that feedback. Now, one of my coworkers has a newer machine, and we were doing some testing. His actually, because his has a better graphics card, in real time, you're seeing more of the effects because his defaults to a high quality setting. So you see better lighting and you see better shadows and things, but still, just to get an idea in the viewport that we're working in, we can see how the lighting is affecting the scene. It doesn't matter how old your computer is. When you actually go to output the rendering, it's going to do the same quality. So you don't have to worry about losing quality in your rendering because your computer is not, the top of the line computer. It doesn't affect that output. Okay. So I think that's enough inside. Let me now close this file. I'm going to open up one of my recents that kind of have more stuff done just to walk through it. Spent a little bit more time swapping materials out and replacing objects and setting up assets. So this one's just kind of fun to show you with a little bit of time. And I think I might have spent an hour in this space to really start to change the materials and add to it. So in an hour time, you can get a lot done and start to bring your projects and bring your scenes to life. And I like to explain Twinmotion and these types of real-time visualization programs as a really great communication tool. So we can show clients and we can show our customers and owners spaces instead of showing them floor plans and walking them through floor plans and something that they might not understand as well as seeing an actual picture. So hopefully this is not freezing up on me. There we go, good. Always get worried when we do the live demos over the WebEx that we're gonna cause something to crash here, but this is this scene. It's got little brand placement there for us, but got the seagulls flying around, some of the vegetation. In the previous demo that the guys from Epic did, they showed a lot with the vegetation. I'll just highlight a few things that I think are pretty interesting and pretty fun. When you start to place vegetation like your trees in the environment, you can change the age, and it's not like a normal scale, okay? Like in other programs, if we scaled something up, it's just giving it, it's just scaling it. Even if it's a younger tree, if we scale it up, it might not be as full, and it just doesn't look as realistic. With these trees and different bushes and vegetation that we can place within Twinmotion, this age actually gives it a percentage of the maturity of the tree. And if we go up all the way, you can start to see that the trees really get more dense and fill out as they get older, and the bark and everything starts to separate. So we're getting more than just a scale up. We're actually adding branches to it as the trees get older. So it's a pretty cool feature. And in the video that I showed in the beginning, at one point, it animated that growing. So if you are into landscape design and you want to show the impact that your vegetation will have over time and see how they mature and grow into the space, this is a really nice tool of showing that. Another thing that is kind of neat about the vegetation, I'll just grab one of these planter boxes here. There's this vegetation scatter. So I'm going to go through here and delete these out just so it's kind of an empty planter. Yeah, the dirt probably needs to be replaced with a different material, but we'll ignore that. So this vegetation scatter, we can pick from a number of different assets that are available. I'll just grab, let's see, these These don't scatter well because they're already kind of spaced out. I'll grab more dense here, grass and flowers. We'll just grab that, and maybe these leaning heather plants. So I'm just grabbing different assets and adding them to my scatter tool. Highlight both of them, and I'm going to paint this planter with that vegetation. It automatically spreads both of these objects that I picked and fills in that planter box. So depending on how it is, and I kind of had an idea with this this bush here because it's kind of a larger spread, that it would go outside of the walls of this. But you know, it's a quick way of filling in vegetation. Maybe the example of a planter box isn't the best example, but think about doing that on an entire site. So before, when I brought my Revit model in, I had this huge kind of ugly looking plane of topography. We could paint grass, we could paint wild grass and weeds and different flowers onto that surface. So it's a really cool way of bringing your vegetation to life without it looking like some flat, blank surface. I'm not going to click on this plane because it would probably crash my computer just because of all the geometry to be painting across this entire landscape. So, but I could click it, let's say in here, you know, fill this in. The more times that you click, the more dense that it's going to be. And one of the limitations we can see here with my computer is as I'm zoomed further away, it's not showing that, it's not regenerating the graphics, but as I start to move in, you can see that it is filling the planter box out. There is an erase tool, so I could erase this and change the diameter smaller. So I can start to clean some of the edge condition of that up. Let's see, there we go. But you get the idea. There are also some other things. I won't go through this, but we can create different character paths really quickly, you know, make egress routes and do different things with character animation. So just generating a path and assigning people to it. That's how we animate people and cars walking through and bikes moving. You can change the width and the density of these paths. Some pretty awesome stuff. You see how fast that generates. And let's see, one last thing. I'm right around the time I want to be at here. So in the Twinmotion environment, and there's, let me elevate up here, look at the sky. So you might have seen in the video that we are able to quickly change the weather, change the location, change the time of the day. And all that's just done through the project settings, which is great because we can globally control things like the weather, like the lighting, camera settings for our entire project. But we can also, when we get into the media output, we can also individually change images. So if we want one image to show cloudy sky and the other one to show clear sky, we have control over that. So just in general, just sliding the weather here, we can get cloudy skies, darker skies. If I go into the middle here with the storm clouds, we start to see that it's raining. We can change the season from summer to fall. Let me go back to fall here and make it not so cloudy, but you can see how the trees automatically start to change color. And then we can also create, so you see how stuff starts to puddle up here, and we can create winter. And all that's just extremely quick and easy. Sure, the building's really dark, but I don't have any artificial lights turned on inside other than that one I just placed. So lots of cool things to do there. Now I mentioned with the media output. So right now my project, the whole setting is that it's in the middle of the winter time and we've got snow coming in here. To create images, it's just as easy as zooming into a spot that you like and clicking this button to create image. So it actually saves, or it saves that sort of thumbnail or that bookmark in the project and creates an image from it. Now, I mentioned that the entire project now is set to winter, so we see snow and everything. Every individual image can hold its own location date and time settings. So I can go into this image that I just saved. I can change its location to a different spot. I can set the weather back to be summertime, or I'm sorry, sunny in the summertime. There we go. Change the growth of the trees globally. So instead of individually clicking on each one and changing it, we can change them globally. And we can change some different effects like wind speed, direction, smog, which if you look in the background here, if I increase smog, it will start to kind of fade out those mountains in the back. We can turn our particle systems, like if we have rain coming in, we can turn those on and off. But all of those settings that I just adjusted only save to this image. So you could have different variations. So all of your images and all of the settings that you can control, they can exist within this one file. You don't have to have multiple scenes set up with different weather conditions. You can build all of them into this one project, which is awesome. And once you have these images saved, you can quickly get to the image. And another thing that's nice is these are like bookmarks, like I said. So I can use these to navigate through different places in the project. And once you're in the image, so once you click on the image, this is fully interactive. I can start to walk around here, and it's like a bookmark. So there's a little more branding for us. We got some video here playing on the TV screens. So this scene, I set up the interior. I did a little bit more stuff. We've got the planters. We've got some chairs, better materials in here. The floor's changed. And this only took maybe an hour of time, just placing different materials, putting in columns and different, not putting in columns, assigning concrete to the columns, doing different floors. So really simple stuff. I decked up the workroom here, the basketball. The last thing I want to show in the demo is once we do have these, I thought I put a wood floor here. I must have replaced it by mistake. But once we do have all of these different images saved or different media created, so the same way that you create images, you can create panoramas. For videos, just keyframing videos. If I click on create video, so this is my first frame. I can maybe walk through the space a little bit, start to look at different stuff here, create another frame, set a time that I want that to animate. And it's as easy as going from point to animate and create your videos. So sure, this is just going from one point to another, but we can create as many keyframes within the video sequence as we want. So that's how we produce that original video at the beginning of the presentation. And between different video clips, you can create transitions to fade out to black and fade in from black, so, or white. And then finally, to output all of this, there's an export button at the bottom panel here, and we can pick what media we want to export, and we can start that export sequence. So picking the different images, I've already pre-done this one. So I did render out one of the images here, which I have open on my screen. So this is kind of the image quality or the image output that we can get. This is just 2K quality, but we can go up to as high of a resolution as we want, so you can customize your resolution. We can export those videos. And then this one here is probably something, at least what I think this separates Twinmotion from its competitors. We can create this full-blown presenter output. And what the presenter does is it packages your entire Twinmotion project into an executable file. So it saves all of the images, all of the videos, all the panoramas, and it builds them into a little application or interface that we can view. What's great about the presenter mode is that you don't have to own Twinmotion in order to open and view that executable. So you could present an entire model to your owners, package it up as a presenter, send it to them, and they can actually open that file and navigate around. They can't change materials or add new assets to the project, but it gives them their own their own project that they can navigate and move around and look at things. So it really gives them ownership of the space, I think, and it's a really cool way of presenting the model. Our intention was that we were going to share out the presenter model for this project, and I think we still are going to do that. This one's pretty large. I think our first run at it was like 10 gigabytes. So we thought that that file size was kind of large with all the videos embedded and everything. So we're going to work on getting that file size down a little bit for you to download it, but we will make that available to anyone that joined the presentation. So we'll have to share out in an email or something in a follow-up the presenter download link. But that's about it from the Twinmotion side. There's a whole bunch more that I wish I could go over in here, including, just should show this quick. If you do have a VR headset, if you're in your model and you want to go to VR, you simply click this button. And that does work in the presenter mode as well. So if you share it out to an owner, they have the ability to go to VR without owning Twinmotion. So there's a lot more to it, but just kind of as a brief demo and highlighting some of the features of the program, I think I covered everything that I had written down. So I will stop sharing Twinmotion. There's just a couple of slides here that I wanted to go over before the Q&A. So let me slideshow. So just to recap some of the things that Twinmotion can do for you. One, you don't have to be a visualization pro. You can produce these stunning visualizations in-house, so you don't have to outsource all of this stuff. And like I said, a little bit of time. The program's really intuitive. We are going to have a one-day training course for teaching you how to use Twinmotion. So if you're looking for a jump start or some hands-on, we'll have a class. But you don't need a dedicated render farm. And we have a better option now to convey our design intent than just showing our Revit models or saving still images out of any program, including Revit. So just some more options in communicating your design intent, I think, is the biggest takeaway. System requirements. So these are coming right from the folks at Twinmotion and Epic Games. So the minimum specs here, they're pretty good. I mean, Windows 7, 8 or 10, 64-bit OS. You do definitely want to have a quad-core chip, 2.5 gigahertz or faster, a GPU that has DirectX 11 or 12 compatibility. And this is probably one of the biggest ones, especially depending on how large your files and how large your scenes are getting. You want to make sure that your graphics card has quite a bit of video RAM. This has 8 gigs for their minimum spec. My computer only has 4 gigs of video RAM, so that's RAM dedicated, to the GPU, not CPU RAM. And my computer's fine. It can open scenes and work through Twinmotion at 4 gigs. But if you do have 8 gigs, it'll run a lot smoother. And then total memory, minimum 8 gigs. Probably the recommended, and they call this recommended, but this is really kind of on the higher end of specs. So if you have these specs for Windows, you're probably going to fly through Twinmotion. The RTX cards are probably the best ones out there right now for real-time and VR graphics. So we've got the RTX 2070. The 2080 is probably preferred, but they have different levels of that graphics card with video memory, so VRAM dedicated to it. And then I am not a Mac user, so I don't know how to speak to all of this, but you can see the specs here. Just for comparison, my system specs, pretty low. I'm only running on 2.7 gigahertz processor. It is a quad-core i7. I'm running a Quadro workstation card, M2000M, which only has 4 gigs of video RAM. So not the best hardware, but it still does a great job in Twinmotion, and I have not been crashing and dealing with issues constantly. So even with my sort of inadequate workstation, I'm still able to work through the program and produce some nice videos and images from it. Just some final information here, and we've got about 10 minutes for Q&A. So I'm sure most of you are wondering what the price is, and we can communicate that to you if you reach out to us, but there is a promotional offer running until September 1st for Twinmotion. That is a perpetual license, which means once you purchase Twinmotion, you own that. So it's a one-to-one standalone license. And with that license, you will get all of your upgrades until December 2021, so almost 2 years of upgrades for free. So whatever they're doing to upgrade packages and content within Twinmotion, you get those free upgrades. Beyond that, they're not sure. They haven't released the licensing structure, the pricing structure, but we can kind of assume that upgrading beyond 2021 will probably be some percentage of what the actual MSRP is of the program. For training options, we are introducing a one-day Twinmotion fundamentals course. So we can cover pretty much everything that we need to in one day, at least from a fundamentals standpoint. But as with anything, we do have custom training also available. So if you have a project or a deadline that you're trying to hit and you want to make sure that you can get into Twinmotion and create a deliverable in time, then we can definitely structure some type of custom training for you to make sure you hit those marks. We have been posting all different types of information on our blog site, but our resource, imagineit.com, virtual reality, has all of the information that you need to know about our partnership with Twinmotion, including all of those blog posts. And okay, that's a lot to cover in an hour. Now we can open up the Q&A, and I do have. So cool.
Well, we do have a few questions here. So one of the first ones that came in was around moving around. So it says, I see that you can skip around or teleport. Are you able to walk through the rendering in real time like you would in a video game?
Yes. So that's kind of what I was doing inside the program here. There's a button you can hit. It's a quick key to ground your avatar. It's just the letter M, and then it's the same video game controls. So you're using WASD to walk through the model. So yes.
Okay, great. There was also a question that was around the BIM 360 workflow. I did answer it, but I'll go ahead and answer what I answered. So one of our viewers was saying that they do have the Revit file and they have the live link installed, but it's a collaborative cloud model over BIM 360. And on the last webinar, Twinmotion confirmed that it was not compatible with BIM 360 at this time.
Right.
But we will be sharing the link to the product roadmap. So if anybody wants to see what's coming next in Twinmotion, what they have under consideration, what's in process, what's releasing next, you can also suggest an idea there. So that would be a good place to add to that if they get a big enough demand of wanting it to work with BIM 360, then they'll put a lot more emphasis on that. Okay, and then we also have, well, you already answered the recommended and minimum specifications. Okay, so as far as presenter goes, so yes, you're able to export a standalone self-executable files. Is there a web-based or something over the web where customers could access and view it?
No, the presenter is just a packaged up exe. So it's a zip file initially, and then once you unzip it, you get access to that Twinmotion exe. There is no live hosting through the cloud or anything like an online viewer of the model. So it is currently standalone. It's not going to be like Insight VR where we could all join in on a meeting and walk around the space. So I like to think of it as strictly a visualization output program, not necessarily a live communication over the web type of tool, if that makes sense.
Okay, yep, I believe so. Also, can these models be viewable from, say, like an Android tablet?
I am not sure on
EXE
that.
might be able to run regardless of operating system.
I mean, on an Android tablet, I don't know if it's compatible with that operating system.
We could check with Twinmotion on that one and maybe get back to the viewer who asked that question. Okay, and yes, this is being recorded. Let's see. Another question that just came in is, I have a D11 feature level 10, or I have a D11 feature level 10 is required to run the engine. Is this related to my graphics card?
I'm guessing, let me look at the question here, read it. I have a D11 feature. Is that an error that you're getting, Scott? Is it feature level 10? So if that's an error, what I'm thinking that relates to is because it's built on Unreal, each kind of scene is built on, they're called levels. So my guess is probably yes, that would be related to the graphics card. Pretty much any errors that you would get from Twinmotion and in any crashes or anything that happen are going to be GPU related, primarily because you're running out of GPU RAM, and that will cause the program to crash. So I think, yeah, I think that's probably graphics related. But again, we can follow up with you on that and get more information about it from you. Oh, it's an error message. Yeah.
Yep. When he starts the application. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe D11 refers to DirectX 11. I'm not positive, but we'll look into it and follow up.
Okay. And does Twinmotion have design option ability like in Revit? So I'm assuming that would mean if you wanted to have, this is a particular design option.
Yeah.
Maybe your wall changes and this is another option.
So yes and no. It's not dealt with the same way that we would think of design options in Revit, but we can create different, I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yes.
We can create different, they call them phasing. So this is where it gets confusing for Revit users. Phasing in Twinmotion, we can make phasing, but it's more like a timeline phase than, I guess in phasing in Revit's timeline, but we're showing demo and it's more of a documentation type of feature. The phasing in Twinmotion allows you to build in, like if we wanted to show the building being built from the ground up, we can assign different elements to different phases and turn them on and off through animation. You could do the same thing with different design options. My recommendation to program that is that you have your two different FBX models that have those different design options, and then you could really easily assign objects to a specific phase. So adding phases is really easy, and then you're just grabbing objects and assigning them to their specific phases. So it might seem like a workaround, but it can be used for design options. So I would say yes to that.
Okay, yeah, and we, like Vince had mentioned, we have a lot of different resources on Twinmotion in the Imagine It Resource Center, including tips, tricks, tutorials, some videos. There is a phasing tutorial that we don't have posted up there yet, but that will be coming. So that could be something you could refer to if you want to learn how to actually do that. It looks like our questions are complete and we are right almost at the top of the hour. So thank you all for coming. We'll send out the recording early next week. We usually get it posted to the Resource Center first. So if you wanted to go on there and check and see if it's available, you can also see the recording from the June 2nd webinar. Thank you again for coming, and yes, we will share all of the links that we mentioned today as well as the recording. Thank you, and this ends today's webinar.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.